Hello, adventurers. Today, we follow the story of Oliver, a tone-deaf but inventive fox who discovers that music can come in many forms. Join us for a heartwarming tale about teamwork, overcoming challenges, and finding harmony in the most unexpected ways. This is Oliver's Flower Chime Symphony. Golden light shone across Sunflower Meadow, where tall blooms reached for the sky and bees buzzed around pollen-filled petals. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying the hum of insects and the distant croak of frogs. Hidden behind a clump of especially tall sunflowers, Oliver, a fox raised by a family of musical otters, knelt over his latest invention. Oliver was building flower chimes, from hollowed-out petals, reeds, and bits of string. Though his adoptive family loved music, Oliver was tone-deaf. He couldn't tell if his notes were high or low. Even so, he believed he could create something special if he focused on the shapes and design instead of the exact sound. That morning, he had tried tuning his sister Olive's cello without asking, and she scolded him for playing so off-key. Embarrassed, Oliver had fled to the meadow. Now, he hoped to perfect his secret project alone. Delia Waddle, a duck with a crooked wing, walked through the meadow, checking on the wildflowers. She stopped when she heard a clanging noise coming from behind some tall stalks. It sounded like wind chimes, but a bit out of tune. Curious, she poked her head around a row of sunflowers. "Oliver?" she asked gently. She saw him adjusting petals tied to wooden frames, frustration clear on his face. Oliver froze, his ears folding back. "Oh, Delia? I didn't think anyone would find me." Delia fluffed her feathers and stepped closer. "What are you working on?" Oliver's eyes darted to his half-finished chimes. "I'm trying to make an orchestra of flower chimes. The meadow already has natural music, the bees, the frogs, the wind. I wanted to add something new." He sighed, shoulders drooping. "But I can't tell if these notes clash or not. This morning, I messed up Olive's cello, and she was so upset." Delia smiled in understanding. "I know how it feels to have a challenge you can't fix. My wing makes flying hard, but there's usually another way to do things. Maybe we can help each other." Oliver looked unsure. "I don't want to bother anyone. I'm worried my music will never sound right." Delia's crooked wing twitched. "Sometimes people like us just need to change how we do something. Do you mind if I try?" Oliver nodded, surprised and grateful. Delia studied the flower chimes. She suggested painting symbols on each petal to show high and low tones. That way, Oliver could see which notes might fit together. "We don't need to guess by hearing alone," she said, reaching into her bag for some paints. Oliver brightened. "That's a great idea. If I label them, I'll know which ones match, even if I can't hear the difference." They worked together, painting dots and lines. A red circle for low tones, an orange triangle for medium, and a yellow swirl for high. When the breeze drifted through, the chimes clattered. Some still sounded rough, but a few notes blended nicely. Oliver felt a spark of hope. Delia smiled encouragingly. "It's getting better. Don't give up." Late afternoon light bathed the meadow in a warm glow. Suddenly, they heard soft footsteps. It was Olive, an otter and Oliver's older sister, who played the cello with skill and heart. She had come looking for Oliver after their tense meeting that morning. Olive halted, seeing all the painted chimes and bits of string scattered on the grass. She glanced shyly at Oliver. "I'm sorry about earlier. I was just shocked you tried to tune my cello without asking. But I know you meant well." Oliver fiddled with a reed. "I'm sorry, too. I should have asked first. I just wanted to see if I could match my chimes to your cello's notes. Olive set down her instrument, eyeing the colorful markings. These are impressive. You're labeling pitches so you can tell them apart by sight, right? Delia nodded. Oliver came up with it after I suggested a little painting. It's like creating a code for sounds. Olive's whiskers twitched. Can I help? I might be able to tune each chime. I'll try to show you which ones blend well. Oliver glanced at Delia, who smiled back. Yeah, he said softly. I'd love that. The three friends set to work under the gentle sun. Delia kept painting symbols, while Oliver arranged reeds and petals to change the pitch. Olive tested each chime by playing a note on her cello, then matching it to the color-coded flower. If the sound was too low, they'd shorten a stem or tighten a string. If it was too high, they'd loosen it and adjust its angle. Oliver used a small notebook to track which chimes matched which cello notes. Delia's crooked wing grew tired from reaching up so often, so Oliver rigged a simple pulley to lift the chimes towards her, saving her from straining her wing. It's amazing how different we all are, Delia mused as she carefully labeled a bright red chime. But that helps us solve problems together. Olive nodded. My ears can hear which note is off? Oliver's inventions keep us creative, and you're making sure it all fits in his system. It's like we each have a puzzle piece to share. Oliver smiled. Even if he couldn't hear the notes properly, he knew he belonged on the team. By dusk, they had lined up several sets of flower chimes in a semicircle. Some were low and mellow, others high and twinkly. Delia carried extra paints, and Olive tuned her cello one final time. Oliver tugged on a rope to raise a small canvas sail, hoping to direct a gentle breeze over the chimes. The wind blew through the meadow, rustling the sunflowers. One by one, the chimes rang in delicate tones. Most of the notes blended perfectly. Well, a few still clanged sourly. It wasn't perfect, but was far better than the jumbled noise from before. Olive plucked a few strings on her cello, testing how the chimes sounded alongside her music. Delia's eyes lit up at the sweet bits of harmony. Oliver didn't know exactly which notes sounded nice, but from their happy faces, he guessed it was working. It's starting to sound like a real song, Delia whispered. Oliver let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. This might actually work. As twilight settled, fireflies glowed across the meadow. Some neighbors, drawn by the faint music, arrived to see what was happening. A family of badgers stood off to the side, smiling at the soft sounds. An older hedgehog, curious, leaned on a walking stick and listened. Olive played a slow tune on her cello, letting the warm, steady notes guide the chimes. The wind caught the painted petals, making them ring in gentle waves. Everyone felt silent, enchanted by the mix of natural croaks, buzzing insects, and the careful chiming melody. The light of the fireflies danced among the towering sunflowers, creating a magical glow. Delia's crooked wing fluttered as she clapped softly. Oliver's heart soared at the sight of villagers closing their eyes and swaying gently, as though sharing in the same dream. When Olive finished her last note, a quiet hush followed. Then the small crowd began to clap in admiration. Oliver smiled, his cheeks warm with pride. After the impromptu concert, people wandered up to admire the flower chimes. Delia explained how they painted symbols so Oliver could arrange them without needing perfect pitch. Olive described how each color paired with a note on her cello. Oliver demonstrated the pulley he built to help Delia paint the highest chimes. A raccoon named Rowan patted Oliver's shoulder. I heard you were tone deaf, but this music sure sounds good to me. Oliver shrugged, a little bashful. I had help. Delia chuckled, tucking a brush into her bag. We all did our part. That's how we learned to make it work. Olive glanced at her cello case. I'm learning I can adapt to my playing style so Oliver can follow the rhythm. I never thought about adding color cues to music before, but it's opened my eyes. Oliver felt a swell of gratitude. Thank you both. I was so scared my invention would sound awful that I almost kept it a secret forever. But now, I'm glad I shared it. As darkness crept over the meadow, villagers said their goodbyes and headed back home. Delia promised to visit again soon to test new ideas. Olive lingered, carefully placing her cello in its case. Then she turned to Oliver with a small parcel wrapped in patterned fabric. I want you to have this, she said shyly, pushing it into his hands. Oliver unwrapped a tiny music box made of polished wood. He wound the small crank, and a simple, delicate tune drifted into the night air. He couldn't tell if the notes were perfect, but the song made him feel calm and happy. His ears perked forward, and a tear gathered at the corner of his eyes. It's so pretty, Oliver whispered. Thank you, Olive. She smiled. I hope you'll think of this evening whenever you play it. Oliver, Olive, and Delia stood in a loose circle under the stars, the sunflower silhouettes rising around them like tall guardians. Tiny orbs of firefly light danced between the petals. The gentle chimes still moved softly in the breeze, giving off a ghostly, peaceful music. Maybe we could play at the next festival, Delia suggested, resting her crooked wing. Imagine a bigger version of these chimes spread all across the meadow. Olive nodded eagerly. I can create a simple rhythm with my cello, and Oliver can work on color-coded patterns that anyone can follow. Oliver's eyes shined bright at the idea. I'd love that. We could show everyone that even if we have challenges, like being tone deaf or having a crooked wing, we can still make something beautiful. They huddled closer, talking about ways to improve the chimes and help more villagers join in. Delia even suggested making extra large petals so the wind would move them in slow, steady beats. Olive promised to share the new color coding system at Melody Hollow. Oliver jotted down every idea, excited to keep growing. Night deepened and the meadow glowed under the silver moon. By now, only the three friends remained. They spread a small blanket near their instruments and sat together, soaking the gentle sounds of wind and distant frogs. A hush lay over everything, wrapping them in a cozy sense of wonder. Oliver turned the little music box crank one more time. The tune played softly, blending with the light clinks of the painted flower chimes. Delia shut her eyes. Her crooked wing relaxed at her side, and Olive nodded along to the peaceful melody. Even though Oliver couldn't hear each note, he felt the love and cooperation behind every chime. With helpful friends and creative ideas, he realized his tone deafness did not have to hold him back. A smile tugged at his lips as the last notes faded into the night. Tomorrow, they could continue perfecting the meadow's music, working together with different skills. But for now, they simply listened, letting the stars above and the blossoms below remind them beauty comes in many forms. And sometimes it shines brightest when shared. The moral of the story? True harmony comes from understanding and adapting to each other's strengths and challenges. When we blend our talents and respect each other's differences, we can discover music that resonates far beyond our ears. Thank you for joining us on Oliver's journey to create music in his own way. With the help of friends like Delia and Olive, he learned that even our greatest challenges can lead to beautiful creations when we work together. Remember, true harmony comes from embracing each other's strengths and differences. What unique gifts will you share with the world today? Good night.